It's a failure. All of it. Education, it's failure. If you look at public schools, you can't succeed in a public school. There's nothing there for you. Nothing. If you look at a private school, they just think they're on a higher level. It's just haughtiness. There's nothing there. No success. No achievement. Then homeschooling? Come on, homeschooling? It's only the people who can't succeed in public school. Only those who can't succeed in an open public learning environment with other students. They're the dropouts. And then unschooling. Oh, Montessori. Oh, it's not even worth discussing. Now, I'm sure I've insulted quite a few of you by now, and I actually intended to. Before I get to why, I'll introduce myself a little. I'm J.C. McCaw. I'm a scholar in the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program at Hillsborough High School, and I have a very unique perspective, or so I like to think. I was homeschooled all the way through elementary and middle school, and then I came to public school for high school. And that difference, being set aside from both of those, allowed me a unique perspective in how they can improve. Now, I'll begin to tell a little about myself through my life so I can tell you how I achieve success and use that to talk to you about how I think our schools can be better. Beginning very young, I was born into a social worker's home, which is a TED Talk within itself. And the most important factor about that is that I was taught from a very young age about emotional intelligence and how to acknowledge my emotions and how to understand my emotions. And beyond that, how to talk to other people about my emotions. Even from a very young age, say 3 or 4, before I could even converse fully and complete sentences. Why do you feel like that? It was pretty aggravating all the time. But I learned from it. Moving past that, I went to daycare for a brief while, where my parents realized my sister and myself did not enjoy it, so they brought us into homeschooling. Now, a lot of people think homeschoolers are fairly antisocial, that they don't like being in public, they're all introverts. Well, I think I'm in public. I was a homeschooler. It's actually not the case. Homeschoolers tend to be fairly social. But the biggest thing about homeschooling was that I was social on all levels of society. I wasn't just social with my peers. I wasn't just social with my classroom. I was social with adults. I treated adults equally and they treated me equally. Now, I'm a Southern boy, so that means it's yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. And I can't call adults by their first names. That's too much. But still, we were equals in conversation. For my teachers, we would discuss things, even with my teachers who weren't my mother. At enrichment programs, we would discuss what we're learning. My peers interacted with adults. We were all there together, all members of society. The largest thing I got out of that was I learned that I was a member of society, not an affect of society. Now, as I got older in homeschooling, I began to realize that while homeschooling is good if you're very proactive about being social, I wasn't necessarily all that motivated to be social. I'm right between extrovert and introvert, so I wasn't the one who was always going to hang out with friends like others. In addition to that, my parents, while well-educated as social workers, were not prepared to teach me higher-level mathematics and science, which is what I'm interested in. I began to look at high schools, both public, private, and I got quite a lot of feedback. Now, those insults you heard at the intro, that's the feedback I got. Those insults are people's opinions, and they kept going. I would say to some friends, hey, this private school, it's not that expensive. I think, I might be able to go there, maybe with a scholarship, something like that. And they'd say, no, no, no. No, see, they're just focused on sports. There's nothing academic there. There's no worth in going there. I would ask other friends about public high school. They'd be like, oh no, ooh, it's not safe. You don't want to go there. And I heard the most terrifying stories. You can go up north of the city. That's dangerous. You're not going to make it very long. You can go out east. Those are weird people. Down south, no, way too dangerous. To the west of the city, it's just bad. No explanation, no logic. So I decided to go check it out. Checked out Hillsborough High School, which is where I ended up, so you can see a little foreshadowing there. And what I found was that, yes, there's always that bad side, but there's always that good side too. It's a public high school, which means there's always going to be those people who don't want to be there. But there's also those people who are constantly working for success. At Hillsborough, I found collaboration and equality. It wasn't like at a private school where you're rich or you're not, in the stereotype. And it wasn't like at other schools where you segregate out by your grade. Everyone's there together. You're all equal. No one's special. All achievement is what you work for. I finally decided on Hillsborough High School. I got in through the lottery and got involved with the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, the marching band, and it was great. And I succeeded. Now, I've done so much since then. I'm composing my own music in IB Music. I'm taking one of the most difficult math classes there is in International Baccalaureate, higher level mathematics. I'm in higher level chemistry in IB. I'm conducting an original cancer research study in interdisciplinary science and research class. All of this is success, but I'd say I'm not that special. I may be smart, but what is a smart person? They're still a person. What gave me success? I began to look back objectively at my life. I saw that each stage of my life provided me with a useful skill and an advancement. To begin with, starting in a social work home, I learned about myself. I learned what it was to be human, what it was to feel, and what it was to have empathy. Moving off of that into homeschooling was just continuous study skills and interpersonal skills. I learned that you can do anything as long as you work hard enough. I could take any class. I also learned that I could pursue things I'm interested in. In 8th grade, my history class was a study of medieval warfare. It's kind of nerdy, but I enjoyed it. Now, moving into high school, that was my chance to understand large-scale social effects. I got to meet new people, have large friend groups, and work collaboratively on projects. But most importantly in high school was that large social factor. I saw people, I met people of different backgrounds, different races, everything. Everyone was there equally. But I began to see an issue with overall structure. I saw all these things that had helped me and weren't all that hard to get, but they weren't present for everyone. I began to think, how can we distill the parts of my life that help me become an achiever from what I could have been, just an average student, and how can we implement them in our schools? Now, other than blatantly insulting the director of schools tonight, I do actually have some other things to say. To begin with, counselors in schools are mainly just used to mentor students in education. Now, they say they're building interpersonal skills, and they say they're developing students, but they develop students within education. They'll talk to parents, but talk to parents at the school with schooling. One of the best parts about living with social workers is that I always had that factor. With our schools, why don't we employ more social workers? Employ more mentors? Double the number, triple the number. Have them in elementary school, going out to families and communities, being involved in their lives. Off of that, study skills in homeschooling. That was the single most helpful thing for coming to high school, was knowing how to study. Now, I have yet to see a school that teaches study skills in elementary school. You have freshman seminar and sophomore seminar in high school, but why don't we start earlier? Why don't we teach students how to think when they're first learning facts so they can understand those facts? Let's move freshman seminar and sophomore seminar all the way back to third grade seminar. Continuing off of that, in high school, one thing I noticed that I didn't have in homeschooling is that there's a rigid structure. It's very hard to get anything approved. There's committees and boards and higher ups and lower downs. There's always a structure to it. In homeschooling, when we wanted to do something, we did it. If we wanted to do a lab, we would go do it. If we wanted to paint side of a building pink, we did it. In public school, you have to get approved. The ideal school for me is a capitalist school. Now, I mean that in the purest sense of that word, where schools can compete against each other and grow and be collaborative without getting approval. Now, I understand that Common Core has done a lot of good things, but Common Core is so rigid. It doesn't apply room for expansion. Why not have Common Core standards be an opportunity, a suggestion for courses? Like, rather than a foreign language, students could take a coding class and understand the foreign language of computers. And rather than biology, possibly a student is more interested in physics. Common Core limits the options a student has. Without Common Core, students could study anything they want and be more involved in school and understand what they want to study. Finally, I feel that a sense of community is necessary. From homeschooling, being a member of society and being able to talk to adults and discuss with them, that is a crucial life skill. But now, in our city, students are bused across town to a different school where not always their parents can even get to school for functions or meetings. They can't help out if they can't get there. Why are we busing when we might bring students together, but we tear families apart? Overall, for me, an ideal school is one that is based around a community, a collaborative group of individuals, adults and youth, who come together to learn. They start learning how to think earlier than ever thought before. Most people think elementary schoolers can't go into analytical thinking yet. They have to learn the facts. Why not start with analytical thinking and go into the facts? This community school that begins analytical thinking early on would also be highly competitive with the other community schools. Rather than just Friday night football, all its programs would be competitive. If a school has a mural painted and another school sees that, they can paint a bigger one. Altogether, as they compete, they would reach higher and higher heights. One of my favorite philosophers, and that is pretty nerdy, but favorite philosopher in that I agree with about 5% of what he says. Bertrand Russell said, "The mark of a civilized man is to be able to look at a column of numbers and weep." What I ask MNPS to do is rather than focus on Common Core and these objectives and these pure numbers and getting diplomas, think, how can we make a person? How can we make it an individual? Can we give them better counseling early on? Can we be more involved? I call our schools to weep when they see those numbers and understand there are people there and they need to make people. Thank you.